Welcome to Wednesday Web Chat. This is Carl Lewis, your host from Vision 33. And our guest this week is going to be Yves Beaucage. And Yves is going to show us some of the really cool things that are recently come into Boyum B1. And just be sure that we can get the most out of it for sure. So many Vision 33 customers use this great tool from Boyum that we think on occasion it's good to just kind of go through and say, hey, did you know about this? So Yves, well, welcome to Wednesday Web Chat.
So thank you for this opportunity there, Carl, for to present this the B1 Up, what's new for B1 Up. What I thought we'd be doing is going through, to begin with, a very high-level recap of what does B1 Up do for us in SAP Business One landscape. And I think the most obvious things that people are using B1 Up for is what we refer to as screen personalization. And just to touch a little bit on this, what's screen personalization? Well, that's the ability to change a little bit what your screen looks like. And I'll give you a very, very silly example that I'm using all the time in demonstrations. And I'm using the sales order as an example as a segue to this segment, because when we're creating sales orders, some organizations are saying, you know what, we like this custom reference field here to be mandatory. We would like to make this obvious to our users that when you create a sales order, don't come in here, try to be cute and put in the reference number in the remarks. This is where it goes. So how can I force people to do so? Well, here's how easy it is with B1 Up to say to the system, well, that field here, providing, of course, I am the B1 Up administrator, I can simply right click and I can make this field mandatory. So that's pretty straightforward. You see B1 Up doing some mumbo jumbo here at the bottom, and then it says, okay, well, that field is now mandatory. Beautiful. So let me try to be cute here and bypass this. So I'm going to put in a date for the delivery and tell the system, well, here's an item number. If I can spell correctly, it would help. Here we go. And now I'll try to save my order. And of course, if you look at the very bottom of my screen, here is the message telling me, hey, you made that field is now mandatory. You can't leave it blank. To have worked with some different screens with different customers in the past, I know very well that people have the tendency of clicking out and say, hey, SAP doesn't work anymore. I can't add my order, because they simply don't see or they don't pay attention to this bottom error code. So how can we circumvent that? Well, certainly one thing we can do, we can tell a system, you know what, let me change how the system behaves. Instead of showing the message in the status bar over here, why don't you show me a pop-up box? It'll be much easier for my user to say, oh, this is what I forgot to do. It's actually in the middle of my screen over here. It's not nicely tucked into the bottom of my screen, so it's much more obvious for me. But I like to go one step further. I like to color code that field over here. So it's obvious, once again, that this field requires something. So what can I do? Once again, right click on this, edit the mandatory field configuration for that specific field, and I can set colors. I can set background and text colors. Just for the demo, for the purpose of this session, I'm simply going to color the background in red, and you'll see immediately an impact when I'm moving away from that field and back in. You see now my field is actually color coded. It is possible with the B1 Up tool to color code any fields. They don't have to be made mandatory first. You can simply color code them should you want to attract the attention to someone to any fields, like the dates, for example, or what have you. That's probably the most obvious things that people are using. The other neat tool that we're using this for, let me just get into the item master to show you something else that we like to use B1 Up for. I've got a field here, a user-defined field. Probably everybody is familiar with user-defined fields by now. If you're not, this is the ability we have to add fields that SAP does not necessarily support out of the box. In this case, I've got something called vendor sample received. So I like to make sure there's a flag on my item master. If this is a brand new product, have we received a sample from our vendor or not? And this should belong to this screen instead of having a sidebar. How can I do this? Well, it's easy with the B1 Up tool to simply right click on that item, or the specific UDF in this case, and tell the system, I like to add this UDF to the main window. And I've got the ability to specify whether or not I should be placing this item above, below, or to the right of existing items. For the purpose of the session, I'll simply click on below, and I'm going to click on the label right here, manufacturer catalog number. I just clicked on this, and now the system has repositioned. I should not reposition because it's still here, but it has positioned that field on my main screen now. So I don't need this anymore. If I need to work with user-defined field, I can just use my pure item master screen and still be able to view this user-defined field I have just added and utilize it from here on. That's just an example of once again, the very common use that we have B1 Up. Let me just maximize my item master screen once again. There's something else I'd like to show you. What comes out of the box as well with B1 Up that could be very quite handy are those buttons that you see on the right-hand side of my screen. You've got with B1 Up the ability to create those buttons and pretty much make them do what you want, providing it's within the realm of what SAP Business One does already. In this case, I have a few buttons. You'll notice that there's one of them that says, show me the open purchase orders. Show me the open sales orders. So I can from here tell the system, well, you know what? Fire off a small report for me right away from here, showing me all the orders from various customers where that item is included. So I can get to this fairly quickly by simply telling the system, hey, I'd like to have a button on here that performs a certain action. Now, the magic happens in the background using something referred to as a universal function. Now, I'm not going to turn this session over to a trading session, guys. I'm not showing this to scare anybody away by saying, oh my God, I've got to learn how that coding works. That's not the point of this session here. But what I want to insist on is the fact that this tool from the B1 Up tool pack called Universal Function allows us to perform multiple different tasks, creating or calling up a dashboard, a report, an activity, a calendar. We'll view those in a moment, but those universal functions can be then binded over to a button. So when you look into my item master definition, for example, I can tell the system when someone clicks on that specific button here called open sales orders, do something. And this is what the something is in this case. It's calling a universal function that we were looking at a second ago. There are other possibilities. You could be calling up known SAP Business One screen directly from here instead of going through a universal function if you need something a little bit more straightforward. So some people are saying, well, Yves, this is cool. We know we have buttons here, but our users are not accustomed to work with buttons and they prefer to view things on the tabs over here. Can you do this? And the answer is absolutely yes. With the personalization tool, something in the system called the item placement tool, we have the ability to create new tabs and move them around and affect their content. So here's an example. If you're comparing my screen right now with yours in SAP Business One, there's probably not that tab. It will not show up on yours, right? Because I have this added to my system where through a tab, I like to view the list of all the open purchase orders for that specific items. So once again, this is the fundamental things that usually B1 Up can be used for. But let me show you some additional stuff that maybe you haven't seen yet, or maybe you are making use of, but some of you guys might not. So here's an example. I'm just going to refresh that order, and I'm going to re-enter this for a different customer. Notice something. Well, two things actually. As I keyed in that specific customer code in my sales order, there's a field here called available credit that shows up. That's a B1 Up field. I told the system I simply want to see the sum of all my this customer's outstanding transactions, sum of AR, invoices, deliveries, and sales orders, and match it against this guy's credit limit. And if in this case, if he has busted his credit limit, I like to place this order on hold. And there's a big stamp here at the bottom of my order that says it's on hold. Now you may say, hey, Yves, there's no such thing in SAP Business One as holding orders. I have never seen this before. Well, maybe you have missed the fact that on the logistics tab, there's a button or there's a checkbox there, I should say, that's called approved. If this is not approved, this order is not going anywhere. So I'm simply leveraging what SAP Business One does already by saying, if the customer has busted their credit limits, take this check or uncheck this checkbox. And if this checkbox is not selected, give me a message on the screen. Okay, well, how do you do all this magic? Well, this is an additional tool in the B1UP tool, in the B1UP toolbox called the validations. So with the validations, you can affect business logics or business behavior of certain screens, I should say. Fundamental things in SAP Business One cannot be changed. For example, I can't alter how an AR invoice is updating the general ledger, for example. But I can certainly affect how the screens are behaving. And this is a perfect example of my available credit and my big stamp over here. I'm actually using a validation function that says, when something occurs, I would like you to do something special. And this is an example of that. Following up on the same line of thought here, I'm not sure how often you guys have seen a situation where you know very well when you're creating a sales order, and I better put a PO number for this one, how when you're putting in a sales order for an item, and you know very well that you never hold stock for that specific item, and you like that flag here to be automatic when a certain scenario occur, when a certain situation occur, I would like something to happen. And here's an example. My example refers to an item that I never keep stock of. So systematically, when I'm creating a sales order for that specific item, I like this checkbox to be automatically selected. So here, this is a regular item that I have inventory for. You know, this checkbox is not selected. But here's another item where this item I do or never keep stock of, and you'll see how the checkbox is automatically selected. Once again, what's the magic behind this? Well, there's no magic. Once again, the validation configuration says, for example, if I have a certain item, certain situation, so there's a condition over here that we can work with to say, in my case, I made it pretty straightforward. If it's this item, then call up, once again, our universal functions. Told you it was a fundamental part of the B1UP tool stack. But in this case, the system says, when a certain event occurs, I would like you to call up that universal function. And the universal function in this case is simply saying to the system, set this field to yes. Now, I'm not going to get into the details of how did I get this number over here, because that'll look a bit cryptic, but it's really straightforward with SAP Business One and the toolbox to find this field number, which is essentially that field over here that we were looking at. Once again, didn't want to necessarily turn this into an how do I do these things, but just be aware that this is possible and it's there in the system. A good example also of those buttons we were looking at before. Look at this guy has busted their credit limit. One question we can also ask ourselves is to say, well, have we contacted this customer over here, Maxitech, Daniel, maybe at Maxitech? Have we contacted this person to let them know that they have busted their credit limit and that their subsequent orders will be on hold? If we want to find out, there's a button right here called Collection Notes. I can click on this, and this is a simple button that I have created for demo purposes that simply looks at all the activities of a specific type that we have got against that specific customer. Now, we've contacted this customer at the beginning of the month, and end of the month, apparently a check is in the mail. I'm sure you've never heard that one before. But if you once again wonder what is the magic behind this, well, there are no magic. It's simply activities, uptyped notes, and the actual types below it is collection. This is what I'm reporting on. So once again, just showing you how we can leverage existing SAP Business One features and making them easily available to you or to your users using B1UP, the B1UP tool stack. Very last example, once again, I promise I'm not going to dwell over this for ages, but just a very pure example of how this tool set can be useful. Look at my PO entry screen. There's a button here called Vendor's Item. What is this used for? Well, you know how it happens frequently that you select, for example, a vendor, And you're trying to order some items, but when you're manually creating a purchase order, that is, you like to know, what am I buying from this vendor? Well, that button will simply list all the items for which the preferred vendor is set to a specialized product vendor, and it lists them out. And it can, using the select button over here, simply select any of them or all of them and bring them onto my purchase order. Now, you'll tell me, well, Yves, we know we can do that. We can actually look up the item master through here, and we can customize the way our lookup is being done. That's cool, but I didn't have to alter the lookup screen over here. The simple button allowed me to do this, once again, using the magic of the famous universal functions. The the very fundamental part, or not fundamental, but the very cool addition, I should say, to B1UP that is quite could have a very positive impact on what you do on a day-to-day basis, revolves around the ability to create dashboards like what you're looking at right now. Now, just for your information, I should have mentioned this at the beginning. You're looking right now at SAP Business One version 10 running on HANA. But everything I have shown you so far is database agnostic. So you're on SQL Server, everything I've shown you will work the same. You're on HANA, same thing. And if you're not on version 10, well, it will still work. The dashboards are quite interesting because they can be interactive, which is not necessarily what you do get should you be running SAP version 10 on Fiori. The dashboards are you can drill down into them, but they're not necessarily so interactive. Let me give you an example. I'm going to take back this map illustrating the states with the cells for all the items by state, by customer, and in this case here, by product group. But there's a selection screen right over here. So right now I'm looking at everything, but what if I like to look into California only? Clicking on California refreshes everything, and I can see the cells from California and how they're broken down by customer cells and product groups. I can actually combine multiple states together. So this map becomes interactive, and I can see my selection affecting a number of different quadrants on that specific dashboard. So that's really a big advantage of those dashboards. And once again, we can go through multiple iterations or variations of what we can do. I'll just show you a few. So you can get a taste of what the system can do. Look at this inventory dashboard, showing me a number of details, batches that will expire within a certain number of days if I have products that are batch managed. If I manage my inventory by min-max, it simply highlights those items in red that are below their minimum, and those that are not are simply in white. So if really, it's going to highlight problematic inventory situations. If you're performing cycle counts, what's coming up your way? So you see a lot of information being sent over, POs that are coming in for the current week. So it's pushing lots of information to a user in a very user-friendly way. What's very important for you to remember that those dashboards are currently being viewed in SAP Business One. They are also viewable through a web browser. So should you say, well, you know what, I'm looking to different type of dashboard, you can select a dashboard of your choice, and it will simply refresh that dashboard to show you exactly what you're looking for on your view. Okay. Very interesting addition to the B1UP tool set are the calendar functions. Now you can look into calendars and say, well, I can see, for example, a calendar that would show me my orders and what's coming in soon. But for example, and let me just maximize this so we can take full advantage of this calendar. If you look at this calendar, it shows you, in this case, it's a service dispatch calendar. I'm using the service view to demonstrate the capability of the calendars. If you look at this, not only do you see the various service calls that are scheduled at different dates, but that calendar view also shows you your different technicians. So in this case, I only have these two guys in my demo database. So if you've got like 120 different technicians, viewing 120 like this on the screen like this might not be as practical, but you can actually set them by teams, for example. In this case, I'm using individuals, and I simply see their service calls, sorry, associated to each one of those. The beauty of the calendars and B1Up is that I can actually drag things and move them around. So that service call that was planned on Wednesday has now been moved to Friday. Double click on this box, it will take me to the service call where I'll be able to see I have enabled the multiple schedule on here, and you can see how it has been moved to Friday. So dragging and dropping is a very powerful tool of this calendar function in B1Up, where I can drag and drop service calls. There are some limitations I've got to let you know, guys. For example, if you would like to switch this from Julie to Fred, you'll see how the system is preventing me from doing this. I've got to drill down to it and change this directly there, but there's still a lot of flexibility should you need to dispatch service calls on a team or on the individual basis. If you're not so much into service and more into light manufacturing, maybe you'd like to know that you have the ability to use those calendars for production planning. Now, it's not a full-fledged production planning system, but it does grant you access to a number of things. Once again, here, my view is showing a production calendar that shows production orders. You can see production order 368, 369 over here. Color coding is simply telling me, well, some of those work orders are released, some of them are planned. You can see from their statuses between brackets down here. So when it's released, I like to turn this into a certain color, and this is all controllable by you guys. But not only that, I'm using the same concept of my service technician from before. In this case, I'm using my resources. So I like to see how busy engineering is, how my senior technician is busy, and how my junior technician is busy. And I can see how I have certain work orders in a certain amount of time associated to that specific resource. Once again, dragging and dropping is possible depending on how you set up your calendar. Right now, drag and drop, the way I'm viewing it by technician or by resource, I should say, is disabled. But Boyum is actually adding new features on an ongoing basis. So I wouldn't be surprised that eventually we'll be able to simply drag this from one technician to another, or actually schedule the time as well on that calendar. Once again, I didn't want to get into lots of technical about these calendars, but just a screenshot for you guys to see that when you do have something special you like to create in terms of calendars, you're not locked to only what I have shown you today, for example, production and service calls. It goes far beyond that. And you can see right from the screen here, every single data sources that you can use to apply to a calendar. So you like to perform, for example, see a calendar that shows up the planned deliveries, the purchase orders, the sales orders, and pretty much every document you have in SAP Business One. And you can even further detail, should you have an appetite to learn how to do this. Otherwise, of course, Vision 33 can always help you with this, but you can personalize how that calendar behave, which is what I have done in order to present this over to you. A regular calendar would look like this here. If you see, if I go for production planning, I believe, that's a regular calendar. I don't see resources over here. I see work orders, and I can actually move them around. That works because I'm not viewing this by resources, and that will have an impact on the other planning calendar immediately. So they are interactive to a certain degree. You can see how the green one has disappeared from the screen. One other planning tool that people like a lot is the ability to perform or view different documents, I'm sorry, I should say, using a Kanban view. So say, for example, we're going away completely from production. Not that it's not applicable to production orders, it's just that I have used a CRM opportunity management to illustrate how a Kanban view can be used. In this case, I think it's pretty straightforward to view that my sales cycle is being represented by those various columns over here. And should I need to do anything with those opportunities? Well, of course, a quick double click drills down to that opportunity screen itself, as you're probably accustomed to if you are using the CRM of SAP Business One, but also has the ability to say, oh, look at this. Now we're into negotiation stage for that specific opportunity. So drag it over to negotiation. So instead of having to drill down and manually move this, you can use a Kanban view to change the status of my different opportunities. Once again, Kanbans are not exclusive to opportunities. They can be used on any kind of documents that have statuses, service calls, production orders, and opportunities for that matter. So you can actually use this and apply this to a variety of different type of documents. The very last tool I'd like to show you on the B1 Up is a tool called Print and Delivery. That's like a sub tool set of the B1 Up tool set. And it's there to facilitate generation of printouts, being like marketing documents, quote, sales orders, invoice, purchase orders, or reports generation. And let me show you the power of that tool using a very specific example. My example will revolve around sales quotations. Now, you guys know when you create a sales quote, one of the frustrating things that you probably face is that when you go in here and you say, okay, I have a quotation for that customer over here for a few items, whatever it is. All right. When you send this over to your customer, the email that you end up being sent to your customer could be somewhat limited, and it is limited to what you can send or what you can set up in the print preferences of those documents. So, say for example, I'm looking to sales quote. What you've got here in terms of the email subject, email subject and email body is hard coded for all your customers, not necessarily personalized. So that's a big drawback. Second drawback is that how can I have SAP help me out automating certain tasks? When I send a sales quotation to my customer, I would like to have an activity being generated automatically to say, hey, Yves, don't forget, in 2 days, I'm going to remind you to follow up with your customer after you have emailed that quote, just to make sure everything okay? Are we moving forward with this quote and what have you? The print and delivery feature allows you to override the functionality of those buttons if you wish to do so. So there's something called a report configuration that allows you to say what happens when I'm, for example, saving that specific sales quote. And now I'd like to send this sales quote out by email. So I'm going to send this out by email, and I'd like you guys to pay attention to the very bottom of my screen when I will do that. So here I go. I'll click on this and look at the very bottom. It says generating report. It's going to say generating email, and it's going to flicker creating activity. You'll see that. It's going to be right after. There we go. It was pretty fast, I told you. But right now what it has done, it has sent, that's just my inbox for, or draft outbox for Outlook. That's a bit finicky. But if I look at my draft, coming up in a second, here we go. Here's my email. Look at the personalization behind this email. The subject says sales quote number 1252. Dear Bob, here's your sales quote 1252, kind regards, and then either the company name or even it could be my name as a user who emailed that document. So I can personalize not only the look and feel of the document itself, but the email and the body and the subject of that specific email. If that's not good enough, one thing that the system has done already also, it has added an activity automatically to my sales quote. So now I have an activity scheduled for in 2 days to follow up for that with Bob at Earthshaker for that specific quote that we have just created. So I know you guys know we can create those activities manually, but now you don't have to think about it. The system will do it for you, should that be something you'd be interested to do. That's just an example of what the print and delivery can do. The other nice tool you get with the print and delivery is the ability to perform mass emailing or mass delivery, as they refer to it. Emailing is just an option. So you can define in your system, well, here's what I would like to do. I would like to, for example, email all my outstanding open invoices. So you can tell the system that this is what you would like to do. And you can tell the system, you open the open invoices only, and I like to email this by default. If I uncheck this, in this case, my selection is for a very specific customer, residue from my last demo. But that's the ability you have in the system to say, here are my selection. Here's what I would like you to do to select in terms of outstanding invoices and automatically email them all out to my customer. In this case, the system is actually, I'm just going to create a preview. I'd like to show you something very fun. Okay, I did the preview so we can look into what the system does. Automatic. Usually this is all automatic, but I'll do something fun with you guys. I'm going to select 3 invoices, and I'm going to tell the system, go ahead and email this to Earthshaker. Now, of course, the name changed, but the customer is the same here, so don't pay attention to the name for the time being. It's actually generating, and then you can think of yourself, well, SAP would create 3 emails for this. So I'm assuming that printed delivery will do the same. And to your big surprise, it will not. It will actually be much smarter than this. If I can minimize this and go back to my Outlook, you'll see the email coming up in a second. Here we go. It created a singular email with 3 invoices attached to it because it was smart enough to know that this goes to the same destination, same customer, same contact. So it created one singular email. So that could be a big advantage also of having print and delivery because it's smart enough to consolidate various documents on a singular email, which SAP cannot do core. What you guys need to know as well, you can say, well, this is all neat, Yves, but I still have to come into this screen and issue or fire off that specific mass delivery manually. Well, there's another goodie in the B1 Up toolbox is that you can create a delivery schedule. So you could be telling this system, you know what, these AR invoices we were looking at before, I would like you to schedule this every day, every week, every month, whatever the case might be, at a set frequency, and then let the system at the set time date wake up and fire off all those emails for you when you're back at home, probably watching TV or reading a good book. And the system will still do your work in your place at a set time and date. With this, I'm going to turn this back over to Carl. This is pretty much what I had prepared for you for today. I hope I did not go over my allotted time there, Carl.
Nope, it was great. And lots of gems in there for folks to think about, ways to facilitate, some speedier data entry in their own systems. Yves, from your experience, how often does Boyum kind of release sort of a new release with new features and new functions of this tool?
It's pretty much once every 2 months they have a new feature pack. That comes with something interesting. They have a concept of what they call quality of life, which is much more geared toward how do I make things easier for someone who defines those universal functions, for example. What kind of tool can I give them? So sometimes the feature pack is not necessarily, oh, here's a new dashboard or here's a brand new feature. It's like, things that have been fine-tuned over the course of a month or a few months, but they often come with nice little features, hidden gems, as you just said.
Yeah, for sure. The Boyum has been a partner for Vision 33 just about as long as there's been SAP Business One. And I'd say, probably approaching 80% of our customers, use this add-on product with great efficiency and effectiveness. So it's always great to review it. And thanks for your particular take on it, which is anyone who shows you Boyum always seems to show you a little different something, right? So it's great to have a different guest. We really appreciate your being here, Yves. And
it's been a pleasure.
Yeah. So I didn't see any questions come in today, but if you're interested in Boyum B1 Up, again, reach out to your regional deployment folks. All of your consultants are familiar with Boyum B1 Up, and they can help you with any of the things that Yves showed you or many others as well. Until the next Wednesday web chat, thanks everyone for being here, and we'll see you again soon on the next episode of Wednesday Web Chat.